Well, Nigel, you've sort of given an introduction to yourself, but I think there's more than one Nigel Walsh because you're so prolific on social media and you do a day job and you've just been promoted. So briefly, who are you and what do you do?
I run round a lot, it feels like. I think you described me last time as a super connector, and actually it's probably a great description. Been at Google 3 years. Prior to that, I ran Global Future of Insurance, Global InsurTech. At Deloitte, prior to that, Capgemini doing large-scale transformation in insurance companies. I also sit on the advisory board for Capital G, one of our late-stage investment firms. I work across Alphabet with folks like Google X that are doing cool things around wildfire and so much more. Common theme there is I am passionately, I wouldn't say in love with, but my goal is to make insurance lovable and bring Google and Alphabet together to go do that.
Fantastic. Meghan.
Gosh, that's a tough one to follow. Meghan Hannes, Chief Underwriting and Claims Officer for K2 Cyber, which is an established MGA. We're looking to specialize in cyber and, to Nigel's point, bring in all of the tools that have come online to inform and grow the next generation of cyber insurance with those automated tools.
Thanks. Zaheer?
Yeah, Zaheer Hooda. Great to be here. Excited to get to see everybody in person. You know, a lot of VC meetings with several of you folks. So, yeah, my background, Cytora for a couple years, joined to help drive North America operations. Prior to that was at Hiscox US, leading their data and analytics automation capability. And at Cytora, as Juan was touching earlier, we're helping carriers shift from manual workflows to digital workflows. So my goal is to work with US carriers to help them achieve these risk digitization objectives.
Thank you. And Charles?
Charles Clarke. I lead the analytics business at Guidewire, but also have this kind of second skunkworksy role, which is Guidewire builds big core systems for insurance companies. And then what? And so I spend an awful lot of my time thinking about the analytics business, but also and then what does Guidewire do with its position with the core systems? How do we help the insurance industry grow beyond just building clunky, great big core admin systems?
Good. Well, Nigel, you asked to keep you on your toes. So you saw the poll, and I'm sure you've absorbed the numbers in there. Don't know technically whether we can get the poll back up, but if not, Hannah, can we manage that?
It's about 35%. For the top one.
Okay, didn't want to put you on the spot, but yeah, just what's your reaction to that? Were you surprised? Do you feel we're heading in the right direction?
A little bit disappointed. We've been talking about it, so not surprised, a little bit disappointed in that the number one was we've been thinking about it and talking about it and whatever else. In my last 12 months here, Gen AI, ChatGPT, large language models have literally taken over everything that we've done. You can't have a single conversation, whether you're in a boardroom. My mum at 78 said, Nigel, what's ChatGPT? My son's learning it at school. So I'm encouraged by it on one hand, but I think we should be past the talking stage. I've got clients of all shapes and sizes right now working with us. Some have got 10 use cases and are really focused. Others have gone the other way and have got 1,500 use cases. So everyone's got different problems with that. But the key for me is how do we get rubber to hit the road and actually start seeing where it had 0 on the results and benefit. I don't mind if we've tried and failed, but we've got to try.
Yeah, and I think there's a question in there saying, is your senior management believing in this? I think we just see a big improvement from last year. But Meghan, I just want to ask you a similar question because you worked for a sort of technologically enabled insurance company before. You've now gone to, I guess, a startup. That 0 is surprising that no one's actually managed to do that. I mean, how do you reflect on that, either from your past career or what you're doing now? Was that a surprise that nobody's managed to achieve this yet?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because particularly with the advent and arrival of AI, we've never seen this much change this quickly. And when you layer that on top of a product like cyber that also conversely has seen so much change so quickly, on every level, right? Inclusive of the external threat peril, it's a very natural partnership to bring those two concepts together in terms of how do we start to enable that trust model in insurance, in data, and then overlay that historical experience. And for me, that meant bringing together all of the different components, as I mentioned, that have come online it's ripe for a blank slate to start to move that needle forward.
Yeah, I mean, that trust one is a big part of it, isn't it? Particularly when in your business, when you're writing cyber, where there isn't as much loss experience as there might be in more traditional businesses. And so part of I think, Nigel, to your point about the adoption of ChatGPT or other generative AI tools, Bard, of course, there's a difference when you're sort of asking it a question in sort of your personal life versus you're making a decision on it. I might come back to that in a minute. Charles, one question for you on that, though, because Guidewire has got an established business with policy administration systems. You've got a large percentage of the world's premiums going through you. What's your perspective personally of the Guidewire view as you look at that? And because you get visibility into what your clients are doing as they're sort of pushing the boundaries beyond traditional technology. What's your reaction to the poll?
Yeah, well, again, this is somewhat of a disappointment. I feel like somebody's just given, I mean, this is really cheesy, but like it's given us another fire. Like we now have fire and we can cook and we can do stuff. And it's like, it should be, thinking about use cases, yes, but also it's just a fundamental new tool to think about how we do everything that we do, both the things that we do today and the things that we might think about doing differently. So one approach we've taken at Guidewire is just an education approach. So rather than like having a small team that thinks about a specific use case, it's like everybody think about using this all day, every day in what you do. You can now do new things. So disappointment that there is, yeah, I'm disappointed that there's not the embracement of this iPhone moment.
Okay.
Turn that round.
I'm sorry in the audience, but your panelists will be disappointed. But we all know the challenges out there. So I think let's frame it in the context of there's a big drive to do this, and we know it wants to happen. And so that actually tends to link to probably one of the reasons why you're here today, which is like, what can you take away from today? So my request from all our panelists is to make sure that by the end of today you go away, at least one thing you can do. You know, it may sound odd, you're here for half a day, but if we can give you one thing to take away from this, that you can think, aha, I'm going to go and look at that or do it, then maybe we'll sort of move this forward. Nigel, I want to come back to this the slide, the World Economic Forum slide about augmentation. People can look at that in different ways if you don't think about it too hard. And I know because you're the one that brought it to me and sort of it was very significant to you. Once talked a bit about it, but can you just sort of talk a little bit more about what this actually means when a semi-independent body outside of insurance is saying underwriters can be augmented? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Yeah. Look, I love it. I came across it watching one of the sessions on World Economic Forum. It was the CEO of Deloitte, this global CEO of Deloitte, the global CEO of Sanofi, global CEO of L'Oreal. So I always look to go, what's happening outside of insurance? The level of depth and knowledge of that group of CEOs, and actually most of the CEOs that we meet day in, day out, truly outstands me. I was with a board recently talking about RAG and tuning, and I can tell you the three or four big questions that every board asks me. It's always regulation, IP, security, governance, model risk management, all the things you worry about. How do we get the same answers each time? How do we control it? How do we get it out there into the hands of people without it doing something wonky? And we see all the bad stuff in the press. There is so much good stuff going on. We've got thousands, I can't share numbers, we've got thousands of customers actively leveraging this right now. Yep. What I loved about the chart, though, was as a reformed consultant-ish, one's smiling, we're there. For years, McKinsey said, this is what's going to happen to underwriters. This is going to disrupt and remove. And the one word change that opened people's minds up to say, oh, how do we embrace this, was disrupt and remove to augment. And all of a sudden, we've gone from, oh my God, I have no job, to actually, how do we make our underwriters, which are really expensive, qualified individuals, to do the things that they love, not play about with sheets and Excel and forms and this and that and swivel chair integration. All that's busy work, all that's toil. So that one simple wording changed was like a light bulb for our industry that went, oh, we can augment people. And it's not just underwriters, by the way. I showed this to one of our large global brokers, and the lady said to me, actually, I don't agree with you. It's not underwriters. It's everything.
Yeah, I just did a quick manual audience poll. I know people don't always like putting their hands up, but I just feel, if you feel in the room, have you got so many underwriters here or people from insurance, put your hand up or you can do it from outside of insurance or underwriting, if you feel encouraged by that augmented word. I'm just kind of interested in taking the temperature of that. Is that a good thing? Can't quite see the hands. They're all a bit British. We're in America now. We want to be. So what's that? It's good. It's 2/3 of the room. So things are getting better. Nigel, use an acronym there. RAG. Just for the people like me who know a few acronyms, not all of them. Just which particular RAG were you referring to?
It's not red, amber, green. It's about how we actually do tuning inside of some of the models and everything else, and how we actually push data around the large language models. But it's not red, amber, green.
No, I thought not. So what does it stand for?
You're going to put me on the spot. Completely got
You
me.
used an acronym.
I'll have to ask Gemini. It's not even called Bard anymore. It's called Gemini.
Okay. What's that? We had a retrieval augmented. I actually knew that.
Adash just walked out.
Retrieval augmented generation. I did know that. Zaheer, I want to ask you a question on this topic. So you were also an insurer, and you also joined Cytora, and I'm just kind of interested. It's back on this point about the view about using technology to make a difference, augmentation, and particularly from the kind of perspective of your clients who you're working with now, which again are sort of self-selecting group because they're working with you. But Nigel and Charles are a bit disappointed. I'm hoping you can give us like a positive angle on the sort of view of, particularly of your clients.
We don't use any AI. No. I mean, you're right. It's a biased answer, right? Because from a Cytora perspective, everything that we're doing has embedded levels of AI across it, right? So if I walk through, our objective when we work with the carrier, as I mentioned earlier, is how do we help them shift to digital risk flows? Now, if you want to help them shift to digital risk flows, that's part of the game. So we'll do first, the reasons first to recap why, right? You're either, because that helps you go into the details, and I will touch on some case examples which will help of what in insurance that was actually being used, where AI is being used. So first, you're either doing this to increase or free up underwriting capacity, to increase the underwriter productivity, or you're accelerating your workflows to respond to your brokers quickly, or you're trying to improve decision quality to have better risk selection. But the whole intention is how do you create an operating model where the underwriters, AI or other tech, allows them to only focus on what's quotable, what's a decision ready, and what's portfolio enhancing. So now let me get into a little bit more of the detail now that I gave you context. So what we do first, you digitize as a submission comes in. So what does digitize mean? We all know, get the external data, get the internal data, but let's talk about an example of what that means. So in cyber, we have now underwriters in a specific cyber deployment, not conceptual, not theoretical, in a specific deployment that we have today. The underwriter, all they do is they have submissions that flow into them, and they no longer have to go through all the proposal forms. And sometimes, for those who've seen cyber, 50 pages, 100 pages of just questions. But now the underwriter, right when it goes through, it says, hey, we found the 2 relevant questions that you care about right here on the form. That saves hours for these guys, right? So that is actually an impact. Then, after you digitize it, now you're evaluating the risk in terms of within the insurer's appetite, within the portfolio strategy. So I'll take another example. We have a carrier who wanted to increase their exposure to residential occupancies while being careful and not increasing flood exposure, right? Flood risk exposure. So submission flows through again. Hundreds of properties pulled out, automatically mapped to a carrier-specific taxonomy of, is this a residential property? Is it not a residential property? And then augmented with external data. So now if you think about that from a property underwriter, within 3 clicks, within minutes, you have a whole risk that says, all right, I know whether these 100 properties fit within my appetite or under my portfolio strategy. That's crazy, right? I mean, we're seeing this stuff now. The final unlock, the final lever is providing decision insights, right? So what does that mean? I mean, that's descriptive insights to, this is where the intention is, how do you analyze the risk before it hits the underwriter? And so instead of showing, here are all the claims, the history, the loss run, and just showing that in a descriptive insight matter, you say, here's the frequency and trend analysis. Instead of showing all of the properties, you say, here's the distribution of the properties across your occupancies, right? I could keep going. Risk controls for cyber. Instead of here's the 50 risk controls you care about. No, here are the risk controls that gave you that priority score and that appetite score. So it's embedded across all of this. So we see it. But again, like you said, it's a bit biased because the folks that are working with us want to jump into AI.
Well, yeah, thanks, Zaheer. I mean, you see it, and you're too modest to name your clients, but I'm allowed to do that. I mean, you've got companies like Allianz, Markel, Chubb recently joined you, Beasley. You've got some big companies out there that have got long decision-making processes, don't take on risk lightly because that's part of their way of the organization. So yeah, we are starting to see it, which is Nigel to be encouraged about, companies that actually are starting to embrace these things. Meghan, I want to sort of pick up on that point and also something you mentioned earlier about the reliance on data and what, maybe you can sort of combine where we are today and where you'd like to go in the future. What's your vision within your organization, but maybe a rallying cry for insurance generally about how underwriters and senior management think about the use of analytics and data, and you can call it Gen AI, you can call it AI, but the critical bit being, how do they get to the point where they can be confident with the information they're getting?
Well, there's a lot there, and so you nailed it, right? And the word is confidence. So as a portfolio manager, historically, what I have constantly contended with is dirty data or trustworthy data, right? So you can apply all of the underwriting rationale, you can have top-notch underwriting controls, but if you're working from a base of data that isn't brought in a programmatic or standardized way, then your tilt is automatically off, right? And so keeping it at a very high level, because clearly there's so much to unpack with the power of AI. For me, again, what I see is a homogeneous and a more homogeneous ingest, right? So then your confidence C-levels rise, right? And from there, then you layer, that's the enterprise AI piece, right? That's where you get all of your efficiency, right? Having underwriters or clearance folks cutting down on that manual process while increasing trust, right? Because now you have a framework that's not human interaction. There are rules and standards, right? Then you get to move on to the really juicy stuff, which is portfolio management, because you're working from a base of trust. You can then apply the large language models. You can then give it commands, not just the historical framework that we've used as portfolio managers of revenue by industry, where you're looking at different graphs of perhaps loss outcomes and you're trying to deduce what are the patterns that elicit either high frequency or high severity or both. That's the really juicy bit where you can ask the large language models to find those previously unseen patterns. And that's where, for me, the automation in underwriting really takes hold, because you can then inform an underwriter of what to focus on, what not to focus on, what can be automated, what needs a human, because you've got the context of trustworthy data, and then you apply that historical knowledge, right?
Yeah, no, some really good material in there, and I'm really glad we're recording this to capture that. But in particular, your advice to the underwriters, Nigel, I'm going to come to you on this one in a second, around what are the boundaries of what you can use and what you can't. Nigel, what's your advice to somebody here that personally understands this and sees the value, but has to make a case internally or bring their colleagues, or particularly bring the person that's going to sign a check to do this? How should they frame that internally about this?
Just sign the check. It's Google LLC. Is that not the right answer? You mentioned Chubb a few times. If you read the investor letter this week from Evan, it was really encouraging. He actually compares AI to the steam engine, the change that the steam engine brought to society. I can't disagree with it one bit. I have this mantra always of think big, start small, act quickly. In lots of the earnings releases that we've read or summarized using Gen AI, of course, you will see people talking about AI and how it's being used in the business. I did get a draw of breath at an event I opened up a while back where I said, Gen AI is not your answer. And everyone looked at me like I was mad. And we've all talked about it. It's been in every boardroom, as I've said. But let's not underestimate what, I'm going to say, traditional AI or AI is doing as well. And if you've got stuff that needs numbers and calculations, then actually what we've done with AI for years gone by is phenomenal. We can actually now take AI and machine learning and Gen AI side by side together to get us better outcomes. The advice I've got for folks, back to my think big, start small, act quickly, is not necessarily just look at use cases, because I've got a client that's got 1,500. How do you then prioritize which ones are those that we do? It's actually what capabilities do we want to bring to our business? And in the Gen AI world, or AI world, we've got things like summarization, integration, conversation, and there's 3 to 5 core things that we want. I don't care if I summarize in a chord form, or a document, or a video, or a loss run, or a phone call, or a dash cam. So how do I bring that capability to my business to enable these things going forward? And that to me is not, let's go pick this use case, and by the way, we've got 1,500, it's going to cost us umpteen million and X number of years. I brought a whole new level of capability to our business to actually interact and transact differently.
Right, so can you summarize that in 1 or 2 lines for someone to take away as a recommendation?
Think about capabilities, not just use cases alone.
Okay, capabilities, not use cases. Right, I'm just going to ask each of the 3 of you recommendation, then we're going to open up for some questions. So Charles, same for you, coming at it from a slightly different perspective, but same question. So somebody here who understands the concepts but needs some help to be able to bring their colleagues with them. What would be your advice?
Maybe I describe how we've done it. It's search for a North Star of the change that you want to affect, and use that and set the capabilities against that North Star. So, I don't know, unstructured data and the curation of unstructured data, and then think about that North Star in the context of the capabilities. Have a direction. I heard this yesterday. Have an idea, but be flexible in the detail.
Mm-hmm.
I think is
okay. So, but it sounds like also don't try and solve everything.
Yeah,
have your kind of like
set a direction.
Can I give you the Google version of that? Everyone hears about the words moonshots from Google X and the Moonshot Factory. The route to moonshots often you'll hear from Google is roof shots, because they're actually more accessible as you get to your roof shots and moonshots.
Okay, roof shots and moonshots. Zaheer, for you, advice.
Yeah. So I think 2 things. One is what both of you are saying, right? Instead of focusing, if you look at a spectrum of how you address these problems, you can either look at it, Gen AI, or what's the next version of tech that's coming out, and how do I force feed that into what I'm using today in the company? Or you go to the other side of the spectrum and say, what is my business objective? What is the outcome, the North Star? What am I solving for? What are the enablers for that outcome? And then you think about all the different components, and some of those components are Gen AI, analytics, and some of them are simple mappings to like broker files that you come. There's a lot that needs to happen to be successful. So my first point is become like a right to lefter, focus on the business objective, and then the technical solutions will support that, and they will change over time. The second piece I would say is, I think we've talked about this, is I think we get excited about the art of the possible, but all the cool things that AI can do. All right, let's pull this in, let's try this. To that same business objective, look at your process today. Just start there. You start there, and then the magic here is the iteration. You iterate. For all of our clients, we don't have that much time to go in, but all of our clients, this is what you do today. We tell them, do not try to do everything on day one. Just iterate that. It helps on underwriter trust, underwriter confidence. Then you slowly add more and more and more.
And left to right, I can't quite visualize.
Right to left. On the spectrum,
Okay.
sorry, there's kind of from a technology, I'm focusing on the technology here, to
Right.
This is the end state of outcome, business
Okay.
objective. So start there, and then shift to, I understand this is my outcome. I want to free up underwriting capacity. I want to improve broker responsiveness. I want to auto-adjudicate claims. Whatever it is, that's your objective. Then you go over here, how do I do that? I need to have these 3-4 different enablers. One of those is Gen AI, to be able to automatically find the key areas in the document. One of them is to analyze the risk when it comes through. Then go there, because what we've seen is the folks that start left to right get over-indexed on the extraction. They're like, did we get to 98.9% yet? But there's so much more to be successful, right? It's not just that one extraction point.
Great. Meghan, I want something from you where people are going to go away and went, that entire afternoon was worthwhile because Meghan gave me one bit of advice. So no pressure, but what's your advice?
It starts and stops with the capabilities, right? And so I agree with what the gents have said, in that don't aim for the moon, aim for standardization, right? My word is standardization, because standardization equals trust, and trust equals adoption, right? And so start with the AI capabilities before you get to the Gen AI, the large language models, because you won't build the base of trust.
Okay, I'm looking at the audience. Hopefully you got something out of that you can take away. If not, and you want some clarification, now's a chance, because we've got some time now for questions. So we have a couple of roving mics around, I'm hoping. Yep, great. So we've got a question. We've got one here.
Gen AI is great and all, but I think a lot of us in the room, and I'm from a carrier, we've inherited a lot of technical debt, and that is keeping us from everything. Is there a way? Will Gen AI solve that? Can we use Gen AI to solve technical debt? Because I feel there's a lot of use cases where Gen AI would be great, but it's like we can't even get the Gen AI into our systems because they're so antiquated.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I love that question. Technical debt, so for those who aren't familiar, is essentially where you just keep putting off improvements and you just build up this sort of legacy system that gets more and more spaghetti-like. Charles, Guidewire's been around for a while. How would you help somebody who is not necessarily just Guidewire, but generally trying to sort of figure out what are the opportunities for going beyond the technical debt to basically leapfrog into the next stage?
Well, aping Nigel's approach to this, come and work with Guidewire, then you have a technical debt problem. I guess, how do you solve that? I think the industry has been in a position where it's focused on exactly what you just said, right? It's focused on building stuff rather than using stuff. And I think that when companies think about how to solve that problem, the mindset needs to, exactly what Cytora is doing, right? It's like, rather than create new stuff, you focus on using. I'm not sure that's going to solve your technical debt problem, but it's going to certainly help you accruing technical debt as you move forward if the solution that you're deploying is always with an eye on using it.
Okay, Nigel, you got
For 30 years, or 20-something years, almost 30, we've been talking about getting rid of mainframes. They still exist, right? I started out in VMS and Powerhouse and DEC Vaxes and whatever else. Finally, I think that we've got a technology that will help us shift off of those things if there's a compelling event to do so. So some of that technical debt will probably be there till the cows come home. It's a British phrase. Sorry if they'll be there for a very, very long time. But with the ability of some of the foundational models that are out there, we've got one called Cody that allows you to code, understand. Lots of the issues in technical debt are we haven't got anyone who understands it anymore. So what do we actually do? What do we actually do with it? One of my old customers had a phrase called grey shoring. I said, Lawrence, what's grey shoring? He goes, I'm hiring all the retired folks with grey hair to come back and figure out what the hell's going on. That's gone, right? That's now gone because the capability exists in the market to be able to understand, refine, and migrate. So the things around testing, making all that more efficient is really, really interesting for us right now. So I do think Gen AI can help unlock the migration off of some of that technical debt. It's never going to go away, and most of us, I'm assuming, in the room are P&C. If it's in life, the P&C transformation cycle is roughly every 7 years. The life insurance one's roughly about 40. So it's easier in P&C than it is in life. I think it is going to address some of that. We have two types of clients. Client one that says, folks like CNA or Admiral in the UK or a bunch of others that will build from the ground up. And they'll just say, we're going to modernize this thing, and we know it's a 3, 4, 5, 6-year journey. Our other type of client says, we're going to augment the stuff that we've got and wrap it and renew it. So we're going to address our underwriters, address our claims handlers, address our contact centers, whatever else they might have, give them chatbots, give them voice to text, text to voice, whatever we need, which gives us a blanket layer of cover while we go fix that thing underneath. It's not easy. It's never going to be easy. And we are rubbish as an industry at turning stuff off.
No, it's not easy, and I feel why some insurtechs or the concept of insurtech failed, because there was a sort of lack of appreciation of the fact that most of the major insurers out there probably all have got massive great legacy systems. I suspect Martha and Robin might have something to say in their discussion of better boring than bust on sort of what's happening now to try and improve that. Right, we've got time for another question.
I got a question.
Okay.
How do you think about SME type insurance accounts versus large corporate accounts?
Okay, how do you think about SME versus large corporate accounts? Zaheer, should we go to you? Is that directed at Cytora specifically or just generally? Well, we're going to give it to Zaheer.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think there's, across the spectrum of types, sizes of business, even if you go one level deeper, there's different types of risk within there, right? I think what you're getting to at the core is it a complex risk or is it a simple risk? So when we start talking about benefits of AI, right, and especially this augmentation point, I think broadly speaking, without a doubt, augmentation for these complex risks. But the slight nuance to that I would say, though, is that if we look at some of the simpler homogeneous risks, there is opportunity to streamline it further. But the difficulty in this question is, or even in the deployment, is being able to identify that up front. It makes no value if by the end of it you're like, oh yeah, this one was a complex or simple. But during upfront and triage, you say, clearly, this one's a complex risk, this one's a large, let's shift it off over here, versus this one has the characteristics. And you might not know it day one, but this is the whole point of start, segment off portions, and then slowly you'll be able to identify what can. And it won't be as simple as what I said, either like a two-prong model where this is the simple stuff that's straight through and this is the complex, it's augmentation. There'll be a variation of how much hands you need from the underwriter. Yeah, exactly.
But
Meghan from Cyber, yeah.
I would add that the economics of SME cyber force us into understanding how to deploy. Yeah. Yeah.
And Nigel, because everyone here offers the opportunity to go and look at Google Cloud, is there a Google Cloud sort of application to that question around size of organization?
Not at all. I mean, what I love about, I mean, it's going to sound very biased now, you should have asked me that. What I love about the Google platform is it's foundational. I want to be at the foundation of every insurance operation, whether you're a carrier, agent, broker, and it scales up or scales down. We've got customers that have, I'm going to say gazillions, that's a formal number now, gazillions of transactions going through at a very large scale, all the way through to very small ones. And actually for years, and I have failed at this, but for years, I truly believe SME globally is one of the most untapped opportunities for insurers, and their agility and size means necessity forces them to use technology way faster, way quicker, back to a technical point. And I think the opportunity to close that gap between SME, MLC, complex commercial is really exciting.
Okay, well, thank you, panelists. Thank you for the questions. I'm going to let you go now, and hopefully Nigel and some of those were enough provoking enough to be able to invite us back next year.
Martha's nodding, we're good.
We'll take it. Okay, thank you.